So anyone who watched this channel for a long time knows that I'm a Smash Bros fan. For the literal thousands of you who aren't, I am a Smash Bros fan. Yeah. Smash Bros is a weird beast. It did not start as a cynical cash cow super crossover conglomeration game like most multi-franchise games are nowadays. It was the passion project of one certain Sakurai and his attempt at fighting games, a genre close to his heart. The idea of adding Nintendo characters were considered after development started. This, along with the fact they weren't given a lot of time to polish these titles, meant that a lot of early characters had a lot of anachronisms with them. Samus's basic approach to projectiles, Yoshi's lack of an up B and the compromises to his jump to keep him viable, Jigglypuff existing at all. One character, however, stands above the rest for being the most anachronistic of all, Ganondorf. He was a late addition to Melee's development, and with no time to fully make him his own character, they opted to make him a clone of Captain Falcon instead. This wasn't satisfying for players or developers alike, but hey, Melee's development was a mess in general, and they got a lot else right for a sequel, so it wasn't a game ruiner or anything. And besides, once they got around to further sequel games, they'd have a chance to go back and redesign them to be more faithful to his source material. You'd think, anyway. Yeah, the animations were updated to have more heft to them, but they kept the framework of Melee, so instead of this ancient evil, a swordsman, a warlock, a beast in man's skin, he was just this guy who punched harder than the rest of the characters. Apparently this was done to not alienate people who liked playing him in Melee, though personally I don't think that's a very big demographic. So this is an awkward position where, yes, had he not been in Melee at all, it would have been better for the character's design in the long term. They eventually gave him a sword and ultimate, and not much besides that. I think the needle between keeping him as is, however much you deem that important, and making him more like the character from the legendary series he comes from, can be maintained. And today I'm going to explain how I think that can be accomplished. I'm approaching this design as an artist and designer who also watches fighter theory vids from time to time. It's important to admit this because a lot of my ideas involve tacking things onto a character that's theoretically already complete, as in the fact that he lacks certain tools is already accounted for in his design, and that haphazardly adding stuff could throw things out of balance. Mind you, he's currently near bottom tier, it's just that if we go too far he could wind up S+ tier. My understanding of fight theory is not complete enough that I would understand every consequence of significantly altering moves. I'm also not a competitive player. My primary way of enjoying the game is playing on random character, random stage, 8-player CPU Smash over and over and over again. So apologies in advance if I suggest ideas that are incongruous to how a character ought to be designed. If there's competitive Smash players that are watching right now, I would really appreciate some feedback. I would really like to hear from someone who is, actually very intimate with the competitive scene. On that note, I'll try to insert propositional frame data for each change. I animated these mostly on 2s, which in a 60 FPS game like Smash would be 5 FPS. So I'll show off the actual frame data for each move, as well as propositional frame data if I did make this in 60 FPS. There is not an Ice Cube's chance in hell that I'm actually gonna do 2D animation in 60 FPS. Do you have any idea what kind of hell that would be? Right, so I'm taking a less is more approach to Ganon. Some redesigns change every move of his, but not only is this unnecessary, as plenty of his moves show off his raw power without coming off as a Kamen Rider villain, but also it's resource intensive. This hypothetical redesign would be released alongside a hypothetical new game, so the more labor we can save for other characters, the better. With that in mind, my list of changes are in a particular order, from least to most priority. Let's start with the petty little additions and get to the more vital and wide-sweeping changes later. First, and as promised, this is the pettiest thing I can think of and would only be implemented if we're just drowning in extra time, is a new down tilt. Like, there's nothing wrong with the current one, it's just, for lack of a better term, it's just unseemly for a Dark God Emperor to do a move like this. Like, there's just too much bending and leg stretching for a dark evil king above it all to do, in my opinion. This is the nittiest of picks, and I would never make this argument outside of the scope of, hey, we're changing everything, so we might as well. Ganondorf had a really awkward run cycle in Brawl and Smash 4. You can tell the guy can absolutely run faster, but he won't? Ultimate made him much more convincing, but if you want to have him approach menacingly while being not at all that fast, I suggest you have him float evilly towards you. Who knows how fast you can actually float? It's not a thing that real humans can actually do. Also, yes, both of these last two moves have animations taken from Magneto from Marvel vs. Capcom. He just kind of got everything right on how you depict and play a villain the first time. This is an effect that seems small but has a lot of implications on how he has to be designed. I'm changing his up hair because it just seems janky to me, and you can actually reuse the animation from the old up B, which is number 6 on this list, for a slow but powerful swipe. Currently, Ganon relies on this heavily for spacing and protection from the air, and changing to a slow kill move would have a lot of implications on his design. Fortunately, all the changes later on means that he gains versatility, so he's not inherently weaker for not having this move anymore, just has a different set of strengths and weaknesses. Hopefully, if I'm doing this right. I actually want to revert his jab back to something similar to melee. To be honest, I just find his melee jab amusing, like just one little love tap and it sends you flying. It's great. Putting a lot of effort into the animation spoils the joke, so I purposely animated not so well. Yeah, I'll use that as the excuse. Down B is the first of what I call falconisms. Though I don't really mind this as much as the others, as charging through enemies is within the theme of the character, still, we can alter the animations to be something more appropriate to the theme, so I made him dash through head first as a pink shadow envelops him. It's like a mini version of his final smash, and can even work as foreshadowing if you're playing with items on. Another one of the falconisms, up B. The new attack is a teleport, but I didn't want him to be just another blinking from one place to another teleport, like many of the teleport up Bs. Instead, he'll fade in and out of shadow, intangible until he reaches his destination, like he does in many of his boss battles. Just something different would be appreciated, I think. So, a controversial change, I would like him to have a variant of Peach's float. Not the version in PM. That one, I still don't know what's going on with that one. Like, that one's like, you tap B in midair, but also it's a reflector, and you don't just stay in the air, you just kind of slowly drop after half a second. Look, I prefer making moves control stick agnostic if possible, because in a hectic battle it's easier to be set in a specific motion instead of returning the stick to neutral. But yeah, a float with the same input as Peach, but not as long duration. Not just a boon for recovery, but also new tricks with aerials at neutral. Just want to be careful that he doesn't step on Peach's toes of air cancel moves too much. Like, they're already pretty laggy, but maybe just a smidge more, just so we don't get a repeat. I'll probably get backlash for this one too, because this is one of Ganon's better moves, but it is the last of the falconisms, neutral air. There's just too much acrobatism in there, which again is implying a characteristic that Ganon just doesn't have. What I designed here is very simple, a rotating back fist. I made the frame data more generous to make up for how good the previous move was. Also, yes, I'm aware I'm replacing a lot of his moves with back fists. It's just a very good move for simultaneously displaying a medium amount of putting effort into things, while showing disrespect for the thing you're putting effort into. This was almost number 1. I had to argue with myself whether this was worse for how simple it is to fix, or with the actual number 1 for how deep the impact would be for changing it. Honestly, this might be a contender for the most awkward move in the game, and of course I'm talking about up tilt. He sticks his leg way up like he's a ballerina before axe kicking it down with an explosion. And it's satisfying to land, don't get me wrong, but he has a move like this already. 2 moves if you count fully charged forward smash. What I designed in this place is where he makes a grabbing motion into the air and a minor explosion of electricity bursts from it. This move is actually taken from Demise from Skyward Sword, Ganon's canonical predecessor. In his boss battle, after you whittle him down, he grabs a lightning bolt from out of the sky and his weapon becomes electrified for the rest of the fight. Obviously we're not doing all that, but it's still a cool reference. I imagine this move actually functioning similar to his old up smash, the one in Smash 4 and Brawl, with a higher than normal windup but is shockingly safe on block. And of course the exact power and size of the move can be changed based on the needs of balance. This move doesn't have to be good in the grand scheme of up tilts, it just has to function. It's just better than I can say for the last one. So the big one. The thing that, if I could change only one thing about him, I would choose this. Like I said earlier, he doesn't need 3 super long wind-up moves, even if this move is legendary for being the strongest in the whole game. But what will Neutral B be now? Well, one of the core ideas around Ganondorf is that he is a warlock, and one thing that screams warlock more than anything else is magic projectiles. And after a long look through of his boss battles through the years, the single most recurring one and the most obvious to tack onto his moveset would be the good old tennis ball. However, this concept has several hurdles to consider before we just add it in. Mainly, there's already a projectile that can be reflected just by hitting it, so we need to ask how this will be different. I put a lot of thought into this, and what I came up manifests in 2 different ways. First off, this attack can be charged, and at full charge it can be stored, just like Samus or Mewtwo. The other thing is that instead of a lot of knockback, it stuns you for a bit, so that Ganon gets a chance to land his big, meaty attacks upon you. Also, when the projectile is active, Neutral B becomes a Reflect, just so you have a quicker option to tennis the ball back if your own attacks are too slow. So, that's all of my ideas. Just kidding, there's one more thing we gotta cover. Yeah, I never said I can't put half a point onto my list. Wanna have 0.5 of a fight about it? So remember when I said we were deleting Warlock Punch? Well, I actually didn't say that if you were paying attention. I'm actually keeping Warlock Punch, but not as a special move or even as a normal A attack. So like, Sakurai is a massive fan of the King of Fighters series, right? He even said it's explicitly one of the inspirations for Smash. One infamous part of that series is that the motion inputs for special moves can get kind of insane. Like if you can't consistently pull off a Shoryu, I have bad news for you. Most infamous of them all is a move that's affectionately known as the pretzel motion, performed by Geese Howard and his Raging Stomp! Facing to the right, the motion goes down left, down, left, down, right. Simple, isn't it? All of this to say, if you can perform the pretzel motion and then press A, you'll get an Easter egg in the form of Warlock Punch. A cool treat for old Ganon players, a reference to KOF fans, who I am a part of, and a reward on Heal Break if you can complete the final task. And there you go, that's more or less my design. One thing I should emphasize is that I'm not positioning myself here as like smarter or better than anyone currently working for Smash Bros. Or Nintendo or such. I just like creative exercises like this one, and I just like turning my ideas into expression. Or expressing them, rather. That's a more better way to say that. This is why I don't speak non-scripted. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. This was supposed to come out last January?